have been the star witness if Mike Pence had the courage then to do what she did and tell America the truth on camera when the country needed to hear it. Mike Pence was 63 years old when 26-year-old Cassidy Hutchinson raised her right hand on national television and swore to tell the truth to the committee. Her boss, 63-year-old White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who is now a criminal defendant in Georgia, refused to give the American people an accounting of what he did in the White House leading up to and on January 6th to the January 6th committee. We now know, thanks to Jack Smith's filing today, that when Rudolph Giuliani was lying about dead voters in Georgia, Mark Meadows was texting Eric Hirschman saying he knows it's a lie. Joining our discussion now is Cassidy Hutchinson, former special assistant to former President Donald Trump, and his chief of staff, Mark Meadows. She's the author of the book Enough, which is now out in paperback. Cassidy, this book is so powerfully relevant today when we're going back through Jack Smith's filing to read what we were also learning in this book about what was happening in the White House that day on January 6th. What is it like for you today when more Americans are getting more accurate information about what happened?
You know, Lawrence, it's a day that on one hand brings me a lot of profound sadness, because it's unfortunate that we're here in this place where we have to be having this conversation, where Trump hasn't conceded and continues to declare that he won the 2020 election when he clearly did not, and he knew as much at the time. But it also gives me a lot of hope for the future and for our justice system that, number one, that Jack Smith was able to file this before the election so the American people have a much bigger picture of the truth heading into the election, and also that he has been able to collect a lot of really damning evidence about Donald Trump and his actions leading up to January 6th and how he is complicit in the attack on our democracy that day.
So it may be that the Supreme Court's immunity decision has left White House staffers like you possibly out of this case as witnesses for Jack Smith, since Jack Smith seems to want to concentrate on people who worked in the campaign, since that makes it clearly not involving official duties in the White House. What is it like for you to now see what the vice president would have said if he had done what you did and testified to the January 6th committee?
I'm really grateful to Mike Pence for what he did do on January 6th. I personally cannot imagine the pressure that he was under and his family was at the Capitol that day. I have another perspective of the dangers that Donald Trump can pose on people, as do a lot of people. Donald Trump rules through fear, and he does it to try to silence and intimidate people from speaking out against him. I do wish that Mike Pence had come forward to the January 6th committee. He did serve in Congress, and in my view, it was an obligation that he owed not only the country, but he owed himself as a moral obligation to come forward and tell the truth. He was the one that was subjected to the attacks for doing the right thing on behalf of Donald Trump that day. I haven't had a chance to read through the entire filing. I look forward to being able to do so from a somber point of view, but I think overall, I hope that in the coming weeks, Mike Pence does find a little bit more courage to speak out more against Donald Trump, not only because his life was almost taken by Donald Trump, but because Mike Pence also knows firsthand how dangerous the man is and how dangerous a second Trump term would be.
What has your life been like since you stood up in this moment that's memorialized on the cover of your book and was seen everywhere around the country? Now that you've been out of the spotlight for a while, is there any normality returning to your life?
There is and there isn't.
Do you feel threatened?
At times, I guess I do. That's a difficult question for me to answer candidly, because whenever I do feel those threats or I do feel those moments of nervousness, I try to ground myself and remember how many other people who have faced threats like that. And I recognize that I'm in a position where I have a really strong support system around me where I don't necessarily have to feel as threatened as I might in other situations. But it is a very vulnerable position to put yourself in. But what I will say about the period after, so I obviously testified, Hardback came out last year, went on a nationwide book tour. So I've had about 6 months to sort of decompress and try to retain as much as I could and collect my thoughts, how I wanted to move forward. And what I found from this experience is not only did this ground me more firmly in my conservative principles, which candidly I was worried at one point that I was going to lose. I went through this period of sort of questioning what I believed in because I had worked for Donald Trump. I really believed in him. I believed that he was fighting for the American people, people like my family, the blue-collar workers, the working-class Americans. And I bought that shtick. But in this period, I've seen very clearly how deeply he manipulates people, how deeply he's been able to use his power to seduce people into believing him, that he is the solution to their problems, and it's only him. So for people like me who really did believe in him, my loyalty to him felt like a very small price to pay in exchange for him actually helping the country heal. I see very clearly now that that is predatory behavior in my view. He's able to target people and manipulate them into following in lockstep next to him. And it's not just the average American voter, and it's not their fault. But we look at Congress, the entire House Republican Conference is almost entirely composed of people who are his foot soldiers. So as important as it is to keep him out of the Oval Office in this election cycle, we really need to focus on the House and the Senate to make sure that this period is behind us and we can start rebuilding a better Republican Party.
We're going to squeeze in a commercial break. I'd like to ask you what decisions you're going to make as a voter in this election. We'll be right back with Cassidy Hutchinson. We're back with Cassidy Hutchinson. Her book, Enough, is out in paperback. When you first came out with this book and were on programs like this and others discussing your experience, you were under a lot of pressure, not by me, but by other interviewers